Hey everybody, my name is Tola, and in this video I would like to give you an introduction to the space strategy MMO called Influence. In the game, you can play or compete with other players in various ways, like mining, building, trading, researching, and of course fighting. You can colonize asteroids and exploit their resources, build infrastructure, discover technologies, engage in combat, and expand your influence across the belt, either solo or by collaborating with other players. This is my second attempt to make a video about the game, so I don't have the proper equipment like a decent webcam just yet, so my apologies for not having a webcam view. In this video, I won't go too deep into some of the sometimes challenging game mechanics, but more into the basics of the game and some of the story behind it. The more in-depth look at the game mechanics I will show in separate videos, as it can sometimes be quite a lot to take in, depending on of course your playstyle and what you love to do in the game. Influence is a game utilizing blockchain technology, with its birth on the Ethereum network, and is the brainchild of EVE veteran player Chris Lexman. Back in 2012, playing EVE Online was a full-time job for him, but it came without any benefits. That got him thinking about an idea for a game that could actually give players full ownership of their content, because after all, it's the players who breathe life in an MMO and truly makes it fun. Then, a few years later, came the development of Ethereum and its smart contracts, which are basically parts of data on a public ledger that can be used in various ways, and one way was the ownership of non-fungible tokens, or in short NFT. That development gave Chris the means to actually build something that he envisioned, and the concept of the game Influence was born. The Influence storyline begins in the year 2046, when a pioneering group of 11,100 individuals left a dying Earth in the hope of finding a better world. On the way out of the solar system, they encountered terrible luck and unforeseen circumstances, which pushed them well of course from their initial destination. Because their ship only had a limited supply of fuel, they were not able to continue to their destination, and they had to look for a new one, within range and before the reactors gave out, as otherwise they would surely meet their demise, drifting in the large cold void of space. Luckily, they found a system that looked promising, with 5 planets, although there was no certainty that any of them were habitable, but despite that, it was the only option they had, so they set course to the system that was called Adalia. Nearly 150 years later, the pioneers' grandchildren completed their long journey and arrived in their new home. Sadly, initial joy was rapidly tempered, as each probe that was sent to the planets within the system reported hostile and uninhabitable environments. There was a large asteroid belt, and a scan showed there were 250,000 asteroids over 1 kilometer in diameter. With no suitable planets to populate, the pioneers had no other choice than to make the asteroid belt their new home, and they placed their ship called the Arvat in orbit around the biggest asteroid called Adalia Prime, and started to dismantle the Arvat, the ship that has served as their home for nearly 150 years, and use it to start building their new home on Adalia Prime. This is where the actual Influence game begins. Our mission as players is to build a new society in the belt, and using all the resources that all the different kinds of asteroids has to offer. All the 250,000 asteroids in the game are NFT, so players have full ownership and control over the asteroids, and they can be sold when they want, or even rent out completely or parts to other players. There is quite a lot to tell about the asteroids in general, but also about their composition, so I will do an in-depth video about that separately and just go over the rough basics for now. There are mainly 4 different types of asteroids, called spectral types. The most common spectral type is the C-type, which is composed of carbon compounds, water and minerals, and they make up for roughly 57% of the whole belt. Then there are the ICI types, that cover around 12% of the belt, and they contain frozen volatiles like methane, ammonia and water. Next is the stony S-type, that is composed of several silicates and contain little to no water. They make up for roughly 8% of the belt. The last type is the most rarest and is the metallic or M-type, which account for roughly 4%. They are the bright remaining pieces of the metallic core of early minor planets and are primarily made up of nickel iron. The four main types populate around 81% of the entire belt. The remaining 19% consists of so-called mixed types and are asteroids that are a mix of those four types. There are in total 7 different categories of mixed types, like for example Ci, which is basically a C-type but then with a higher abundance of volatiles, or an SM, which is an S-type but then with more metals. That makes it a total of 11 different types of asteroids where you can choose from, and all harvest a numerous amount of resources that can be refined or used to produce many kinds of products. The production chains to make all the items in this game are huge, so again they need their own separate video, as even making for example food is a process with many other processes that needs resources from all main asteroid types. It's not only the asteroids that are NFT and used in the game, but the pioneers that arrived in the Arvat and their descendants are NFTs as well. As you might have guessed, there is a good amount to tell about them, so again, a more in-depth video will follow, but basically they are the playable characters in the game. There they are called crewmates, and they allow you to take action and can specialize in various roles you like to play and interact with influence. You need to own at least one crewmate to play the game, and a crew can hold up to a maximum of 5 crewmates. There are 5 main classes you can play with: the miner, engineer, scientist, pilot and merchant, and all have specific skills that adds bonuses to certain things you do in the game. A miner adds a bonus to the mining aspect, an engineer to refining or building, a pilot to flying throughout the belt, and so on. You can combine any class in a crew, ranging from 1 crewmate per class to up to 5 crewmates of the same class. For example, if your main activity in the game is mining, you can use a crew of 5 miners. Maybe you like to use a crew of 3 miners and 2 engineers, or even a crew of 1 miner, 2 engineers and 1 scientist. There are benefits to each approach, but also drawbacks, so you have to choose wisely, depending on the actions you take in the game. At the time of the recording of this video in January 2023, there is no combat or PvP in the game yet, as the game is still full in development. The development of the core game is spread out over 4 main releases. First release is Arrival, and it marked the arrival of the pioneers in the Adalia system. That release is already active, and it introduced the possibility for players to purchase the first 11,100 asteroids, raising funds for the developers to build the game. Cool fact is that influence is being built without capital from big investors or companies. They solely rely on capital gained from the community, as they strive for influence to be a community-driven game. The second big release is called Exploitation and will happen in probably a few months from now. That release will be a huge milestone in the development of the game, as it brings the actual first gameplay to the game. It introduces the mining of resources from the asteroids, so that the players can start building all the infrastructure like warehouses, refineries and marketplaces, and start up the overall game economy. The developers initially seed the game with some resources, ships and a marketplace to buy those resources. But from that point on, it's up to the players and they will have to build everything themselves. The third major release is Discovery, and that will introduce the possibility for scientific and technological research, and is a step up to the invention of new or improved technologies and skills. It will bring new ship designs, propulsion and many other technological breakthroughs to the game. Lastly, there is the Conflict release. As the name indicates, it introduces combat into the game. By that, the game has been built out by the community for quite some time already, and surely it's inevitable that conflict will arise. Friction between alliances, pirates beginning to strike out against trade ships, or simply just players that enjoy the PvP aspect of the game and take the opportunity to get into a fight when they can. Conflict brings the strategic aspect of the game to a whole new level. At this point, there are two versions of the game you can access. First version is the official main game that currently has its home on the Ethereum network, which is a layer 1 blockchain. As the game logic is fully integrated with blockchain, Ethereum is at this point too expensive to play the game, as it needs a lot of transactions to store all the actions on the blockchain, like mining the resources or building infrastructure. That's why the developers will release the playable version of the game on a so-called layer 2 network, in this case Starknet. That is a separate network that's connected to the Ethereum network, so it can utilize the security aspects of Ethereum, but at a fraction of the cost. The first official release of the game on Starknet comes with the second main release exploitation. Second version of the game is a test version on a so-called test network, and there are the new features for the main releases being tested. The beauty is that everyone can access the test version as well and eventually play around with those new features before official release. That way they can help the developers by testing out the features in a controlled environment and finding bugs and problems before releasing them on the main game. As of now, the features that are being tested are limited to mining the resources from the asteroids, building warehouses and transporting the resources across an asteroid. But in time, when those features are running smoothly, new features will be added for testing, to the point the test version is ready for the official release. There is so much more to tell about this game, like game mechanics, the economy, the in-game currency sway, production chains, and so much more, but it's just too much to wrap it all in a single video. So I will try to make several, diving deeper into the specific aspects of the game, with the next video an introduction to Influence asteroids. Now you might think, what makes Influence unique? Influence is the first of its kind, taking space realism to the next level, and the developers try to be so scientifically accurate as possible for basically everything. Each asteroid serves as a player's base, which orbits in real time, so many strategic decisions must be made with many aspects of the game. All asteroids, except the largest one, Adalia Prime, are player-ownable NFT and acts as land in the game that you can exploit for resources or simply rent out to other players. The economy will be fully peer-to-peer, and marketplaces where players trade their products are even owned and maintained by players, so everyone could potentially own a marketplace on their asteroid that other players can use to buy and sell. Lastly, there are no NPCs or non-playable characters in the game. That means that players are the only source of in-game materials and they need to exchange or barter with other players. Think I covered majority of Influence from the wider view. So, did this video made you more curious about the game and want to know more? I will put up all the most important links in the description below, including the link to the official game and the test version, if you like to check out the current progress of the game. I also add the link to the official Influence wiki, as that has all the information about the game for you to read over. Want to see more from the game? Stay tuned for more videos, where I will go more into detail about certain aspects of the game, like the asteroids or crewmates. Don't have any experience with blockchain? Don't worry, I will make a video where I explain on how to get started with Influence and the several ways to do so. This is the end of my basic introduction to the Influence game. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please hit the like button, and thank you for watching. Have a good one, guys. Bye bye.
Our ancestors left a dying Earth, hoping that they would find a better life, finishing a journey started 150 years ago. We have finally arrived in Adalia, our new home. This wasn't the destination our ancestors originally sought. And with no habitable planets, we must set out and hope that we can make a new life within the asteroid belt. Survey equipment was quickly repurposed, and resource scans were performed. We have identified the most promising asteroids for exploitation, crews have formed, and the citizens of the Arvad are dispersing across the belt. We have begun to dismantle the Arvad to build ships and develop the surface of the asteroids with mines, refineries, factories, and markets. Our operations are growing, and with the beginning of colonies, expansion of trade, the advancement of technology, a new life appears possible. But with every shining light comes a shadow. Did we leave our envy and greed, our ruthlessness behind on Earth? I worry that conflict will be upon us before long.